Hello and welcome to Akshay Chavan. Thank you so much for joining us, Akshay. You've just written this lovely book, The Wealth Networks: How Roads, Rivers, and Seas Shaped India. It's got a foreword by Gurcharan Das, an introduction by Devdutt Patnaik. And it's really, here it is. And it's really a remarkable book in how it tells us about how geography actually determines history and how trade routes really were the way to funnel culture and religion to various places from India. I'll leave you to tell us about how you came upon this book and how you sort of researched it, and what do you do in your day job, Akshay, so
Okay.
that our viewers can know a little more about you.
So the roots of this book are in my background. I always liked history since my school days, but growing up, these were the days of the IT boom. And I studied IT rather than history. I studied at Mumbai and Lancaster IT management, and over a, a decade almost, I was in the corporate world handling digital media campaigns, e-commerce campaigns. But I always kept my love for history alive, and to get away from those busy corporate days, I would do a lot of traveling in the weekends. My love for history took me back, to it in 2017 when I started Live History India. These were the early days of social media, and the whole idea was to imagine history for a new age in a very easy format. Now, today we have come far away from those early days. But during Live History India days, what happened was that we were working with a lot of state governments. We were going to some of the remotest places in India, from, say, for example, Tarai on the Indo-Nepal border down to Karaikudi in down south, from Kutch to Assam, and just traveling and visiting sheer volume of these places. For example, the caves in the Western Ghats, like Kanheri or Karle Bhaja, which are near Mumbai, or there are caves near the eastern coast of India, like in Vijayawada, or there were so many monuments, Chittorgarh or Khajuraho, and over time, gradually, I started noticing patterns, that there was a certain logic to it. There was a reason why a particular Buddhist cave was located where it was, why a fort was located where it was. And all those connections started coming together. And my research on the history of these different places really helped in making me these connections. So eventually, when I moved out of Live History India in 2025, I started something called as Pratiti. We work with uh, helping people and find employment and imagining, lifestyles in just helping them find sustenance in a new age. We work with bonded laborers, we work with women. And again, that took me to remote places across India. So over time, I said, I must compile all my interesting research into this book, which has come together. And during, the publication of this book, the war in the Middle East happened, and suddenly people realized just how important geography was for the shaping of history. So indirectly, also, thanks to Mr. Trump, that people have suddenly realized the importance of the concept in this book, which is geography shapes history.
And now that you brought that up, let's talk a little about Hormuz as well. You've described the importance of Hormuz in the past and how it came to be, and how it also brought the Parsis to India, and a lot more. Talk about the Strait of Hormuz.
So when in February this war started, and the newspapers started talking about Hormuz, for me it was just so familiar, because for my research for this book for the last 3 years, this name Hormuz kept cropping up. It cropped up in my research on Sindh, in Gujarat, in Konkan, Goa, down to Calicut. So we have to understand that when India was trading from the seas, the ships which were there were what were these small boats or dhows, and they could only cover a certain distances because they had to stop for water, stop for refueling, stop for supplies. So Hormuz, which is located at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, was this perfect location for any ship sailing from South Asia towards the Persian Gulf. So you could be sailing to Basra or Bahrain, but you generally halted at Hormuz for supplies and then continued your journey forward. The same thing was with the Red Sea, where you either stopped at Mocha or Aden and then you moved your journey ahead. So, because of this location, Hormuz became extremely important, especially from the 10th to the 16th century onwards. And there was something which was called as the Kingdom of Hormuz, whose only source of money was the toll from the passing ships. And it was a interesting city where there is a lot of references to Hindus staying there, people from other communities coming there. Now, the word Hormuz, one theory says that it comes from Hormaz, which is the deity Ahura Mazda, which is the main god of the Parsis. So, what happened was when the Arab invasions happened and a part of the prosperous Parsi community from Central Asia, they were facing persecution. They first moved to Hormuz and they were staying there for a couple of years. They were negotiating. Then they moved to Diu, the island of Diu of the coast of Gujarat, and finally Sanjan, which is again in Gujarat. Now, again, if you trace the journey of the Parsis, we always imagine that people who migrated or refugees migrating, they just pack their bags and flee. But it was not like that. It was you, for example, if a refugee today is leaving Palestine and going to the west, or Syria is going to the west, he'll go to Paris, he will go to New York, which are existing commercial centers along, and he will travel through those commercial networks. So even in that time, it was there, and that also helped me trace the history of Sanjan. Like Sanjan is this, today it's a small village, but once upon a time it was one of the most important ports along the coast of Gujarat. So you realize that even the movement of people, the coming of Jews to Cochin or other communities, it was all happening through these wealth networks or the economic networks along the seas.
Yeah, and there's something else that's in the news these days, the cowrie, the putti cowrie. And I want you to tell us about the origins of that as well.
So now I still remember, and I got a bit offended that in some time back when India had a dispute with Maldives, and everybody was trolling Maldives, oh, these group of islands, and India so big and Maldives so small. But for much of history, in Maldives was one of the most important economic partners with India, because you see, the thing is, in those days, metal was in short supply, right? There was gold coming in from trade. Silver was also coming in from trade. We did not have many gold or silver mines. There were copper mines located in some areas. So for basic transactions, you needed a denomination, and which was a cowrie shell. Now, cowrie, because all the shells are of a certain same size and generally of the same weight and all, they were perfect for currency. Not just India, but also places like Southeast Asia, places in Thailand, Malay Peninsula, they were all using cowries. Like we call it the Indian Ocean world was using cowries as currency. And these cowries came from these beautiful atolls, these coral reefs of Maldives. And you see, the Maldives had full of these cowries, but what they needed was food and they needed cloth from India. So these ships from Bengal and Odisha and some places along the western coast of India would come with the textiles and with food and return filled with cowries, which would be used as currency. So this cowrie trade literally monetized, formed the basis of the prosperity of Bengal and Odisha for a very long time, almost till the late Mughal period. And that whole concept of putti kodi, do kodi, so these all sayings which are there, they all come from this economic tradition. And I mean, which I will not reveal, but things like ghode bech ke so jana. Why is that? I mean, that's a very popular saying in Hindi, but nobody's actually seen it deeper. But I have explained that in my book. So that would encourage your viewers to buy the book to check it out.
For sure. The other thing that I found so fascinating was things like Mocha and Basra, the Basra pearls and the Mocha coffee. We don't realize that, when you talk about the Basra pearls in Hyderabad, you don't realize they're from Basra, the traditional route, I imagine, that must have been. And also you talk about how Hyderabad was such a rich city, state. or even the Mocha coffee in Yemen, and the twinning with Surat. There's so much to unpack in the book. Talk a little about the rise of certain cities, the fall of certain cities, and the equation of certain cities with certain products.
So when I was researching for history, I realized that prosperity happens with connections. Somebody needs something from you, you sell it, and you get money or surplus in exchange. I mean, that is the same principle which is operating today with AI and Taiwan and South Korea and all the things which are happening with the global economy. So during the medieval period, there were phases. There was a time when Europe wanted coffee, and they were buying the best coffee was obviously along the coast of Yemen, and the port of Mocha was the main place where the coffee was available. So the huge amount of silver was coming into Mocha because the Europeans' demand for coffee, and the Yemenis wanted textiles from India, and again they wanted food. They wanted rice from Mangalore. So they were giving us silver in exchange for our textiles and our goods. And it is estimated, if you read the Surat story in my book, almost one fifth of the global supply of silver was coming into India through this route, which was from the Mexican mines to Europe, Europe to Yemen, and Yemen to India. And it was the same thing over time, when the Europeans wanted Bengal silk, or when they wanted jute or muslin or spices. So these commodity cycles which were there, and which people wanted to buy. And that led to the rise of the cities. Like, for example, Calicut or Cochin. Now, these are the places where pepper was there. Say that, oh, the Europeans came to India for pepper, but the fact is, pepper was only found, along the coast of Kerala till around Mangalore. Then there was Gujarat, which had fine textiles, the Patan Patolas, which were traveling to Egypt and all over the world. One of the interesting things which I've written in the Khambat story is about how leather shoes in the medieval world, just imagine 13th century, from Cairo to Damascus, people are ordering shoes from Khambat because it had the finest leather shoes, which Marco Polo writes in his memoirs about how fine the leather work of Khambat was. So this whole globalization world, which we think is so modern, was happening at that time. And the goods traveled through these routes, which were determined by uh, geography.
And also, it explains certain obsessions, like the obsession that Kerala has with gold. You know, I presume it has something to do with all the gold coins that it got in return for pepper from the Roman Empire.
So that was another very fascinating thing, where you can actually, if you draw a line through the Vindhyas, or say the Narmada or the Tapi river, that may be described as the gold and the silver line of India, because you don't come across many references of silver coming to the south, but you have this huge quantity of gold coming either to Kerala coast or also the Tamil Nadu coast, because gold was generally found in Sumatra. So this Sumatran gold coming in enormous quantities there, or Machilipatnam, the coast of Andhra Pradesh, and so on. And then when you go to see Gujarat or Bengal, there are or even Bihar. I mean, Bihar was one of the most fascinating discoveries for me, because there is these descriptions of barges of laden with silver bars and ingots and coins sailing all the way up the Ganga to Patna and Munger, which were ports. So such enormous quantity of silver. Again, Punjab, Central Asian silver is coming into Punjab. So if you see all the famous silver work of India, there is Kashmir, which is famous for silver, Lucknow silver, Kutch silver. Uh, Again, no silver mines nearby. So where was the raw material for this fine silver work coming from? So it was all coming as a part of the trade. And same thing, gold. This enormous temple gold in South India, these fabulous stories of the great wealth of the southern kingdoms that you hear. So this was again coming as in exchange for trade from different parts of the world.
And of course, the most famous opium and tea. That's possibly the most famous trade of all, and made many, many Parsis very, very rich.
So again, now the funny part is we talk
Although they
about.
would not like to acknowledge that, I think.
So I was coming to that. So the funny part is we imagine it was just the Parsis who made great fortune, but the links of this opium and tea trade are so far and wide. Now, in my book, I have explained how there were two great sources of opium. One was what is known as the Bengal opium, but this was more around Mirzapur and Bihar, those areas where it was grown, and which was the British monopoly. The second was the Malwa opium, which was grown in near Indore and Ujjain. And now the British opium, which was there, the British got a lot of customs money selling it to the Chinese and Canton and all of that. But the Malwa opium, the Indian merchants wanted to make a lot of money. So the Malwa opium was either coming to Bombay, controlled by the Parsi
Hmm.
merchants, or it was going through this great diversionary route through Pali, Bhilwara, Jodhpur, all the way, across the Thar Desert down to Karachi, and then sailing to Canton. I mean, and at that time, Sindh was not a part of the British Empire. So the Parsis, the Marwadis, the Maratha rulers of central India, the Sindhi businessmen of Karachi. So everybody made huge fortunes in the opium trade. And in fact, I was very surprised that even in Madras, when I was tracing the Madras networks, the Armenian traders of Madras also made a lot of money through opium trade. So Bombay, Indore, Karachi, Madras, which is now Chennai, all these cities, the basic initial fortunes of these cities was based on opium trade. And again, now what was happening was because the deficit of this opium trade had to be balanced. The Chinese were also producing tea, and the Europeans loved tea so much. So there was this balance of payments thing because so much of money was going to China to buy tea, and it was to balance this actual tea trade with China that British started cultivating opium and selling opium so that that could be balanced. So India was actually paying China, I mean, trading with China to help, send money to uh, England. And then that whole Dadabhai Nauroji's drain of wealth theory. So that is, I mean, it has this connection with this whole tea and opium trade.
What are the lessons from history that we can learn today in this very globalized world of, tariffs and trade routes being blocked and people looking for alternative routes? What can we learn?
Okay, so essentially, if I had to say there were two takeaways, if there are two takeaways from my book, it would be first is respect geography. Okay, Hormuz crisis has shown to us that even in this age of AI and data centers, the underwater cables still run through the Strait of Hormuz. The oil still comes from there. So you're still dependent on geography. Another good example of this is, the aftermath of Operation Sindoor, where India and Pakistan are nuclear powers. We have drones, we have weapons. So in the end, the main leverage was the Indus Water Treaty, because Pakistan cannot get the upper riparian areas of the Indus River. And same thing for us applies with China as well. I mean, you cannot it cannot be replaced. Geography cannot be replaced. So geography still matters. The highways in the Himalayas still fall during the landslide. So you have to respect geography. And second, India has always prospered when it has been connected by networks through the world. Different areas. So when Bengal was once a jungle, but when it opened up, it became extremely wealthy. Same thing with Punjab. With once the Central Asian routes opened up, in the like the Mughal post Akbar period, when the Khyber Pass was expanded, it just prosperity just came to Punjab. So different parts of India became so prosperous, opening themselves to the world. So instead of this protectionist way of looking at things, we must look at uh, being part of a wealth network, not only internationally, but the same logic also applies in India, where Delhi, Manipur, and Maharashtra form a part of the wealth network instead of this Delhi being the center and Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra and Gujarat being at the periphery. So it also gives us a lesson to look at India as union of states.
Right. And I think more than that, it also shows us the importance of learning from the past, which we seem to, we are very fond of referring to the past and saying how big we were, how important we were, but we don't seem to have learned the lessons from the past. Where is that disconnect coming from?
Okay,
We
so
like to refer to it but not learn from it.
but the one line answer to that is because we are looking at the past for validation. That hum kitne mahan the, we did this and we did that. The reason why India, faced so many invasions, we could not compete, was because we did not adapt technology. We were very inward looking at that time, and unfortunately, it's come full cycle, and I think we are as inward looking today. So the lessons, I think we're just taking wrong lessons from the past, that how great we were, and just
We invented everything.
everything. But the fact is, yes, but now what? I mean, are you taking those technologies? I mean, it was, for example, say the king of Tanjore. There was this Maratha ruler of Tanjore. He realized the importance of printing, and he was the first person to start Marathi printing in India. So, once the printing technology comes, the languages come. When we adopted railroads, that transformed Bombay and so many of the fortunes which started happening. You could transport food, to help during the famine relief and all of that. So our prosperity, like you look at Homi Bhabha, you look at Vikram Sarabhai, their knowledge comes not looking at the past. Like Vikram Sarabhai now the Sarabhai family came from one of the great Mahajan families of Ahmedabad, the Sarabhais. I've referred to the great Mahajans of Ahmedabad, but he didn't rest on those laurels. He was seeing what was happening around the world, the space technology and all of that, and he wanted the best for the people. So our lesson to learn is that instead of looking for validation, let us look at how we prospered by absorbing all those global technologies and all the good things which the world had to offer.
Wonderful. I think that's as good a note as any to end on. Thank you so much, Akshay. I do recommend the book to everyone. As I said, The Wealth Networks, How Roads, Rivers, and Seas Shaped India. It really does reveal a lot. And more than that, it's also a very playful and intriguing way to approach history and to enjoy it rather than treat it as a burden. So thank you so much, Akshay, for your time and effort.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.